What is up, guys? We're going to be running a directory traversal attack, and we'll be talking about bypassing file path validation. We'll be making use of this lab, file path traversal validation of start of path. And the objective is to retrieve the contents of the etc password file. Okay, fine, let's access the lab. So it's these images that are vulnerable. Let's open one of these images in a new tab. Let's check out the URL. So at the end, there is a file name param as part of the query string, and its value is /var www images 44.jpg. Now we should recognize that as an absolute path name. In other words, it doesn't just list the name of the file, it lists the file's location all the way from the root directory. Let's send this request to the repeater in burp. Let's head to the repeater tab. And let's just copy over those request query parameters. So we have file name, and the value of file name is /var www images. Let's just double check the number of the image, 44.jpg. Let's add that to our request. We can see the file name param is now appearing as part of our HTTP request here. Let's send that to the backend. And let's check out the render tab, and we can see the same image being rendered. So it's the same request we're seeing in burp and also on the browser. We know the objective of this lab is to retrieve the contents of the etc password file. So the obvious thing to try is simply to change the file name param to etc/password. Let's apply changes there. Let's send that. And we get missing parameter file name. Now we know there is a file name parameter. That's clearly not the problem. We wrote the file name parameter. We know it's there. So when the system comes back at us with missing parameter file name, we know that that's not actually what's happening. We've triggered an error that doesn't quite match up to the actual error that's taking place. Either way, we can see that the system doesn't like that file name parameter. It's unable to use it to load up an image. Now, what's happening in this case is there is some validation on that file name parameter. And what the server is checking for in this case is that the root path of the path name provided as that parameter must meet certain requirements. In fact, in this case, it must be var www images. So this is the server's attempt at security. They're saying, well, let's just make sure that if we are given an absolute path, then those first three folders must match up with var www and images. If not, something funny is going on, we'll just return an error and we won't load up any file that's being requested. And we can demonstrate that if we make up a file name, which I assume doesn't exist, 1029.jpg. Let's send that to the backend, and we get no such file. So you can see we get a different error message. So here it's a request that's being legitimately passed by the backend, but it's saying actually we can't find 1029.jpg, whereas the first request we sent is actually returning an error because it's refusing to deal with that file name param at all, simply because the first three folders don't pass its validation. So what can we do here? Well, we can make sure the first part of the string passes the validation. We can then use traversal sequences to navigate back upwards, and finally jump into the etc directory and grab the password file. So let's apply changes there. Let's send that to the backend. Let's have a look at the raw response. And you can see we have the contents of the etc password file in that HTTP response. So the takeaway here is that although there was some validation going on for that absolute path we submit as the file name param, it doesn't mean that the application's secure. As we can see in this case, it's still extremely vulnerable. So just keep this in mind if an application is making use of an absolute path parameter. Sometimes there might be validation run on the earlier part of that path, but that doesn't mean we can't access folders which are further up directories, because we can simply make sure we pass the validation and then after that execute a traversal sequence to find ourselves where we want to be. All right, that's pretty much it. Hope you learned something about file path traversal or directory traversal. Thanks very much for watching.